Greetings, huzzah! Tantus Naradagical, your Lord and Emperor here at the Dracovin Empire, and welcome, one and all. We are once again heading to the stars. Yes, it is time for us to dive back into the wonderful world of Starfinder. Paizo's take on a space sort of fantasy sci-fi thing that we've all grown to love and, enjoy talking about here at the channel. Today, I am once again walking you through a group of species of various aliens and other ancestries that you can play, whether they originate from Galarian star system, or some other star system. And we're going to be going through them continuingly alphabetically as we've been doing, and though there are no L's, none of these ancestries start with L, we're starting technically with L and going through R. So, we'll be going through 18 of them today, and I'm planning on 2 more parts of this entire thing to finish it up. So, I hope you're all ready to continue chatting about these. And the entire thing is, I will tell you what books to look in. I'm using the Archives of Nethys as a kind of guide to talk to you about all the different things about them. I'm going to tell you the books to go to, but I'll have an image. You can check out the Archives of Nethys for yourself. It's got a lot of good information. It's got most of that information. If you want to dive deeper, I'll give you a source for it too. But we're going to kind of summarize, give you some information, give you an idea of what you're looking at when you're possibly playing each one of these. So, let's start with the first of these. Oh, I have to move myself over. Duh! The Maraquoi. So, let's talk about the Maraquoi to begin with. They're native to Marita, one of Bredda's moons. They're traditionally based around their societies around semi-nomadic hunter-gathering lifestyles. They're common in the pack worlds. Unlike a lot of the ones in the pack worlds, their genders are centered on a separatory system, and all 7 playing a role in reproduction. So they have 7 genders that participate in the reproduction cycle of their species. We'll talk about that in a minute. Their culture developed amongst a complex web of kinship and tribal affiliations, which actually helped diffuse a lot of violence with their people and drove them to respect a lot of life in a lot of forms. I mean, like, when you have to have 7 participating beings to reproduce a new generation, it does kind of help with that. Outside philosophies, technologies, commercial insects have challenged a lot of their identity and lifestyle, and there are those that wrestle with isolationist sentiment that exists within their people. If you're looking ability scores, bonus to con, wisdom, penalty to dexterity. They have a blind sense, they're a climber, low light vision, natural hunter. They have a prehensile tail. Physically, they are bipedal humans, covered head to toe in a silky fur that is generally gray, brown, or silver. Many grow the fur on top of their heads into basically a type of hairstyle. Their fur actually functions like thousands of small antennae, transmitting sound to their sensitive skin and allowing them to navigate even in pitch dark. There is some control over the follicles. They can make hairs erect to capture faint sounds, or basically flattening it to dampen really cacophonies of sounds. It also can show their mood, their fur arrangements. They do have ears similar to humans. They're vestigial and overshadowed by their skin sensitivity. So they basically originally, as a species, and their ancient ancestors had ears a lot similar to humans, but effectively grew this new type of sound sense over the years. They have compound eyes. They're set forward on their head, true slightly forward. And they have a wide range of vision, better than most humanoids, and they can see in very dim light also. They have a prehensile tail, and basically can use it as an offhand to store some things, and helps with balance. They do have short, stubby claws on their hands and feet to help with climbing, and a sticky film on their fingers. again, helping with climbing. An adult stands about 6.5 feet tall. The 7 sexes have minor physiological differences. They are not really pronounced enough that a non-Maraquoi would recognize them. On average, Quiches, the bearers, and Meshes, the cradles, are shorter and stouter builds than others. Zyshas, the facilitators, tend to be taller, willowy builds, sometimes reaching heights closer to 8 feet. Ushias, the sharers, typically have shorter tails. The fur of Ilshilas, earth sires, and Quashas, sky sires, and Shusas, water sires, tend to have dappled appearance and distinctive patterns. I'm not going to dive into Merita very much. If you want to look into Merita, I would recommend you either check out Archives and Efforts for yourself, that's their homeworld, or look up some of the other things either online or various books and sources. Again, they're going to talk a little bit on the Interstellar Species book, which is the book you get for this one. So, let's talk about genders and families, and then we'll talk a little bit about their societies before we finish up. So this is one of the ones we have a pretty good amount of information about. So, each of these 7 sexes plays a role in reproductions. The Isha, Quasha, and Susha all contribute genetic mirror to the Ushia, who then passes it to an unborn child, to the Kisha, to gestate. So basically there are 3 genetic donors, one that combines that material together, passes it to one that gestates it, then the infant is passed to a Mesha, who carries the child, nurses them, and has them in a marsupial-style pouch. So here's where we've gotten 6 of the sexes. 3 genetic bearers, one that combines it together, one that gestates it internally, one that has a pouch to take care of it externally, and a 7th one, the Zysha, who doesn't have a physical part of the process, but has psychic influence that is vital for viable birth. And these species also see monogamy as a very unusual concept because of this kind of thing. The thing is, because of the number of individuals, Maraquoi don't really necessarily have romantic relationships with the other parents. In most cases, they're romantically linked with some other parents, and metamors with the rest. It is rare for them, though, to decide to have children if they aren't at least in a romantic relationship with at least one of the participants. A full time when all the individuals are romantically involved with each other is uncommon, but not unheard of. So you can have 7 Maraquoi in a romantic relationship with all 7 of them and have some children together. Once they've weaned and left a Mesh's pouch, the children are raised communally, and the parents, though still collecting, having the collective influence over the development. Their language doesn't divide pronouns by gender, instead roughly giving them a translate to this or that person. When they speak common, they only use they, because again, they 7 genders. They don't define them as differently as we would when it comes to pronouns. And anyone else after that would be based on individual preference, just what they feel like using. There is actually an interesting thing about them, that some identify with a gender other than the one they were assigned at birth, or some do actually express a degree of gender fluidity. Again, that makes sense with 7 genders. These individuals are highly respected in Maraquoi society, believing that they are actually spiritually influenced by an ancestor of the identified gender. So it's an interesting idea that, an ancestral spirit is influencing you, so you're kind of either both of these, or you identify with this other one too. They're a very interesting concept, and, take things to very... 7 in group is pretty big. So, again, they were originally hunter-gatherers, pastoral. Having like these year-long circuits to harvest seasonal resources. The inland ones had reptilian ungulates they relied on, hunting wild populations, herding domestic variations. Coastal ones, of course, fished. It was post-Gap era that the Maraquoi began accepting Alf-worlders. from what we can tell, before the gap, it was oftentimes turned away by the ambassadors, kept at arm's length. They were very against it, and whatever happened in the gap, again, changed them a little bit. They don't agree what's best for their planet, people, or culture. Many have embraced the galaxy, traveling new technologies, welcoming off-worlders to Marta. There are traditionalists who think that the rapid transition from early metalworking to space-age technology is a threat to their traditions, because that is kind of something that has happened to some of their culture. They have basically super advanced. And there are traditionalists that would rather just get rid of all the off-whiters and be isolationists. Most Maraquoi kind of have a moderate view. That they're kind of in the middle. That they see that their rapid development is something that they do have to deal with their culture, but they see that it is something that they still need to do. It's like, we've got to accept that this is happening to us. We are now space age when we were hunter-gatherer. We have to accept that this is an advancement we're taking. But yes, we do have to still look at our culture and respect it. They have a very communal culture. Individuals have personal possessions. Tribes maintain territories. Property, in the broader sense, is very uncommon until recently. Resources were for all of people of Marta. And so things like backfiling, replanting, ecologically monitored expired mines were an important part of it, that, the landscape was left relatively undisturbed. We have more off-world mining now, and that's kind of changed the way of things. Again, breaking into the traditionalist versus expansionist kind of idea of it. And that's another thing, too. They've got this complex reproductive family system means that it's hard for a tribe to lose a few people, even, too, for it to continue. Highly realistic, non-lethal combat is something that is actually used to settle disputes, internal conflicts, and there's an honor code for respecting one's foe. It is ingrained in tradition that most Maraquoi who go off-world still carry out ritual post-combat to honor fallen foes or friends. They still do view killing their own as a horrent. And there are still dangerous predators, though, in Marta. So they are trained in lethal combat. And so there are some that take up mercenary work. It's divisive. They're believing, like, as long as it's fine as long as you don't kill our own people, while others feel it's outside the honor system. Again, their government was originally tribal and did very well. Contact with tribes was still frequent. And if you reached adulthood as a Maraquoi, you would often leave the tribe of your birth to form a family in another. So it made a web of trade, information exchange, extended families that tied kind of globally together. So it's sort of like, you reach an adult, you're expected to go basically find another tribe to join once you reach an adult from being a child. Treaties were very rare, and most deals only basically last a few months before they're separate ways. After the gap, a new centralized government was necessary to represent them to the galaxy and protect the planet from exploitation. An intertribal council headquartered in Ryphorian was formed. Each tribe provides a representative, and Marta's 275 known tribes, of them, 247 have representatives on the councils. 28 traditionalists or isolationists have declined seats. They were given the option, but they also prefer to remain separate from the galaxy. The council's involvement in day-to-day affairs focus on interplanetary policy. So this council of pretty good amount of members of the species basically represents them to the world. And they have a religion. It's no formal one. They focus on ancestor reverence and work of a Davidic entity. So we'll keep that simple for now, and we really should move on because I've spent a bunch of time in the Maraquoi, but there's a lot of information on them and they're interesting. But we should still move on because there's more to talk about. Boom. Bigger picture there. Move that one there then. There we go. We'll do that one for this bigger picture. All right. Second on the docket today is the Megalonyxa. Probably butchering the way it's supposed to pronounce, but it's Megalonyxa, because Y-A-X at the end. They're from Starfinder, the Adventure Path number 27, Deceiver's Moon, which the Adventure Path, that one, is... Can I give you the name of that one? Sorry. I was in the Starfinder folder earlier, and now I'm not. 27 is in the Threefold Conspiracy Adventure Path. So if you want to look at the Starfinder Adventure Path where this is at, Threefold Conspiracy, they hail from the heavy gravitated world of Karnak in the Vast. They contemplated the stars as a mostly sedentary species, built a thriving civilization with the use of magic. Space vice eluded them, however, but then extraplanetary visitors arrived. They were discovered as basically a highly evolved society eager to go to the stars. Effectively, it's not that they weren't even looking for that, it's just that Starflight eluded them and they were a magic-based society. So, within a few decades, all of them left Karnak, consigning their cities and settlements to the waste of history. Explorers from other worlds can learn much from these remains as they can withstand the planet's crushing gravity. A typical one's about 10 feet tall and weighs about 500 pounds. So, yeah, their entire species was fascinated with the stars and basically left the planet. It's a really interesting history for them there. Strength and inter bonuses, dex penalty. They've got some dark vision. They are large. They're good at sabotaging, and they're from a high-grad world. They got tough hide. And that's all we have about them right now. So, more might show up in the future. You never know for some of these. If the things like Alien Archives and the books pop up. But speaking of this dude here, from Alien Archive 3, the Morlamaw, from the small planet Arnisei in the Vast, features a small, ice-laden landmass. The emotions contain most of its life, including vibrant Morlamaws. They've got imposing physical bellies and generally good-natured personality. Their imposing physical side belies their generally good-natured personality. Torso ends in a single wide flipper. They can breathe both underwater and land. It's considered that maybe their ancestors lived on the planet's continent in eons past. Right now, only brave members of their species venture onto the land. Swimming to the surface isn't uncommon. Their side flippers provide a large degree of fine movement, can manipulate objects, use equipment. It has 4 tusks, which they decorate with patterns meaningful to them as an individual. Coloration isn't necessary, corresponded to that of their parents. They're sometimes born with multiple colors, and that's seen as a good luck for the family. They're particularly between 10 and 12 feet long and weigh between 1 and 1.5 tons. Their society is concentrated in several dozen cities in long undersea trenches. They have extensive urban areas that effectively form small city-states. Each city has a leader, though some inherit their titles while others are elected. Depends on the city-state, basically. Their buildings tend to be very regular, them digging them straight lines in the trenches, following lateral curvatures of the terrain. Many take to engineering and develop underwater versions of common technologies. Computers remain an engineering challenge. There are no other species native to Arisnel, and the trench cities are very easy to protect from the dangerous predators that inhabit their cold ocean world. Travel between the trenches is risky. They have de facto highways along most efficient routes. And if you commit dangerous crimes, you are exiled. You're basically sentenced to fend for yourself in the underwater wilds. Most succumb to the wilderness, but a few thrive and become basically even more deadly. Their society is very orderly. They follow others. Daily lives is defined by waiting in lines. They're primary carnivores, and many are skilled hunters. Their ancestors speared fish with their tusks. Modern ones like to use spears, nets, and traps. They cultivate and gather shellfish. Adventurers hunt on land, and consider the meat that they find on land a great delicacy. Spellcasters are quite common, and even those that can't cast spells are knowledgeable about mystical topics. They're also fairly religious, worshipping a large number of their own deities, and attending religious service regularly. And each trench city has its own particular patron deity, very Greek deity kind of thing. The language is based on gestures and expressions just as much as words. Gestures vary between regions, and what could be innocuous in one trench city could be insulting in another. This makes communications between these trench cities very difficult. Music and dance are a very important part of their culture. Choirs and orchestras abound. Instruments are typically percussive or metal stringed, since most function underwater, and usually accompanied by vocals. It's very structured with multi-part harmonies. Their dances take full advantage of being performed underwater, and entertainers twirl with the currents. Amarcel has recently attracted visitors from the Pack Worlds, thanks to its natural resources, and Morlamaws are introduced to things from outside their planet for the first time. Now, several of the major trench cities are developing have teams working on water-filled, drift-capable starships. Adventurous Morlamaws have taken to stars in other ways, getting jobs on mining companies, trading consortiums, the Starfinder Society, Abadar Corp, and those find orderly Morlamaws as very excellent employees. Among other species, they do have a very good reputation being friendly, good-natured, cooperative, and sometimes somewhat gullible. Con and Charisma are the bonuses, Wisdom with penalty. They're amphibious, cold-resistant, dark vision. They land at swim speed, and they, of course, have their tusks. Morlamaw. I think this is the one I have to do this for. Nah, that's what we're talking about. There we go. I had the book here. This is from, did I give you where Morlamaw was from? The Alien Archive 30 I did. So this is from Starfinder 37, The White Glove Affair. This is when I do have this book here, so I was able to get a little cup out of it. So this is from the Flay, Free, or Die adventure path. And this is the Moyishuu. So, the Moyishuu, they are Fae. The origins of these Fae, Moyishuu, are mysterious. And as tightly restricted... They're mysterious as the tightly restricted method of harvesting sensations on their homeworld. They merged in the wake of the post-gap planar terraforming of Valvilia 6, with insight on the planet's mineable emotions. That's a weird statement. And set up a monopoly on the substance, and basically oversight all the mining on the planet in general. Upon waking each day, they choose a dominant emotion that influences their personality and can project it onto others as a Sophial ability. Two Moyishuu Sophial might tap into the same emotion. They individualize as much as they can, though. A joy might manifest mischievous glee, kind benevolence, sadistic pleasure. So it's sort of like they tap into different versions of the same emotions a lot. They're humanoids with brightly colored skin, darker markings across their forearms and shins, a long pointed ear, crystalline hair, between 5.5 and 6 feet tall, 135 pounds, and live about 200 years. Bonus to charisma. They've got their emotion sense, insightful low light vision, and then soul feel, which I'm not going to get into it, but there's fury, joy, and sorrow are the main ones that they choose from, and there's, that's an ability if you're looking to play one to talk about. That's all we have on them. Again, it's another one that's been introduced in a adventure path, so it tends to have, unfortunately, lesser amounts of information when it comes to talking about them. It's the good or bad of using the adventure paths. Anyway, from yet another adventure path. This one, the 8th book in the Adventure Path series, which would be from Against the Ion Throne, Escape from the Prison Moon. So that's the one that this was introduced in. It's another one that's been introduced in a adventure path, so we have some information on it, but not as much as some of the other species you could play. But the Neskinti. They're from the lush green world of Jor 3, and it's a place full of natural wonder, primal mystery, and these are a small part of it. They're an ancient, close-knit species of primates. They live among the dense academies of the jungles, and have entire generations that do not even go near the ground. Myths amongst the Neskinti speak of Nesk, a powerful nature spirit who blessed them with sentience and granted them domain over the skyscraping flora of the native jungles. In opposite to Nesk and her spiritual progenies, which are said to live in all objects, they've nurtured the enormous trees of Gajor 3 through horticulture and magic, molding them into expansive hanging settlements. The Aslanti didn't really have trouble conquering Jor 3, which had no established technological cultures to oppose them. They initially ignored the Neskintis. A few anthropological expeditions discovered species had value as ecologists, after which the Star Emperor began recruiting Neskintis aggressively. They rewarded them with citizenship for their cooperation, and Neskintis have found adapting the Star Empire difficult. Most are content to carry ecological tasks, seeing their duties as an extension of their holy mandate, while others seethe under the Empire's control. They're capable brachiators, adapt gliders. They have small legs that are still capable of locomotion. Fur coloration is blonde to dark brown. They're omnivores and have become vegetarian by tradition. It's also customary reverence towards Nesk and other spirits. Some have extended this devotion to include the Aslanti religion. Technology befuddles them as a nature-worshipping species. Once the shock of space travel and the destructive power of modern technology wore off, the species retreated into generations-long conversation about the virtue of adapting or rejecting technology for their own use. So far, villages of Neskinti on Gajor 3 remain mostly free of technology, and most Neskinti who visit the wider empire find return to a simpler life frustrating. So it's sort of like, it's this kind of divide as they haven't adapted enough. So you find little bits of technology in their villages now they've been drawn to it. But those that have gone out and gone into the Empire and experienced it and had their jobs and stuff and began to adapt to it, whether they're angry at the Starfinder or find, solace in there's more ecology for our belief system in the universe to, help do, then coming back home is kind of hard. They're about 6 feet tall, 150 pounds, considered an adult at 20 and live to be about 20 years. Bonus to Dex and Wisdom, penalty to Strength. They're brachiators, so they can move through forest trees at a climb speed, forest friends, and a glider. And a little slow because they're small legs. Anyway. The Nuar. You can speak to that in the Nuar. So this is from Interstellar Species book. So we do, again, there's another one that we have a good amount of information that we're going to go on because the Interstellar Species book provides a good amount. But we will, again, try to keep it short as best I can, not get into too much of it. So this is actually one of the many species that trace their origin to Galarian. They basically bear a resemblance to minotaurs that were known to develop in that world. Basically, despite beginning the era after the gap with no homeworld and living in the pack worlds, the desire for Noirs to build a place for themselves, coupled with natural aptitude to complex boundaries and structures, led them to basically spread far and wide as explorers, colonists, troops, and engineers. They adapt to local customs, and many spend their adulthood with members of other species. Bonus strength, intelligence, penalty, dexterity, dark vision, they can gore, they have a mind maze, and natural weapons. Anyway. They're generally described as being pale minotaurs, and it's a fair but oversimplified description. They're short by minotaur standards, about 7 to 7.5 feet tall, and with their sturdy frames, sizable horns between 260 and 350 feet. They're bipedal and hooved, strong, nimble hands. They have tails ranging from short tufts to long, flexible ropes that nearly reach the ground, and the trait isn't universal. Covered in short, thick hair, longer, shaggy hair common at the crown of their heads, and sometimes along the spine to the tail tip. Nuar of all genders grow between 2 to 8 horns, and 2 or 4 being the most common. These horns generally grow from the upper back of the skull and sweep forward, allowing them to be used in close combat. These horns begin growing shortly after birth and reach full length roughly about a decade of aging, often seen as a sign that Nuar is an adult. Those with more than 2 horns generally have 2 of typical length, and the rest being shorter, often curved in different directions. Nuar with 3 or 5 horns are rare, but not unknown, roughly as common as humans born with different color eyes. Amongst Nuars with oddly numbered horns, roughly half of them are more on one side of the head than the other, and half of a center horn growing from their forehead. They're made of a dense keratin, and honeycomb powders of dentin and microscopic tunnels of enamel, which coats the outside of the horn. New enamel is produced at the root if the sheath is damaged, so the horns can repair and regrow. Severe damage can be permanent. They have nerve endings of flesh in the base of the horns, and have no feelings in the horns themselves, and are dense and rough enough to survive exposure to vacuum. Many Nuar armor suits leave their horns exposed for easily allowing combat without damaging armor. They're generally described as white in coloration, but again simplified, typically Arctic or desert coloration, with white, light gray, cream, and tan the most common. Some have darker bellies or palms or noses. Most have pink or red eyes. Much smaller amount of them having bright blue, green, or yellow irises. And roughly 1 in 20,000 have radically different coloration with red, blue, or even purple hair and skin. They're very good at complex patterns, remembering twist turns, interlocking shapes, and stuff like that, naturally. They considered Avalon Station to be their homeworld, believing their true origin on Lost Galarian. There's evidence of this idea. Things like the Legacy of Nuar, Nuar the Minotaur Prince of Absalon. So yeah. It's just that post-Gap, Nuars were in the Pack Worlds, the majority on Absalon Station, and most that lived on the station in quarters clearly designed for their physiology. And they have artifacts that can be traced to the Inner Sea region on the missing planet. Because of the lack of Nuar-focused cities or settlements anywhere else, the theory that Nuar was one of the scores of species that originally were in Galarian is pretty big for their origins. You know, so... Anyway. And again, they tend to get along with cultures with long pre-Gap histories, humans, elves, Lashuntas, Cathashas, and, you know, adapt to a lot of non-Nuar neighbors very easily. They're big on discovering, like, new ways of life and stuff like that. So, yes. There's a little bit more about them, but I think that's probably good enough to give you an idea about them. And if you want to get into them deeper, I would recommend, again, the Interstellar Species book. It's a very good one for a lot of these. Or just check it out on the Archives. So, now, we move on to something a little bit more familiar. And that is the Orc. Yes, Orcs. Alien Archive 2, they are mentioned. They're rare. It was suggested they were numerous on Lost Galarian. Today, they can be found in greatest number in Apostate, where they were drow-held slaves. Over the ages, some have gained freedom, creating formal armed clans on Apostate or other worlds in the galaxy. Though many free orcs on Apostate remain second-class citizens that serve the drow as mercenaries, technicians, and laborers. Few in the Pack Worlds have ever seen one up close, and many people know their reputation as brutal monsters. Even the free orcs in Apostate suffer from isolation and drow propaganda, remaining ignorant to wider possibilities. On average, they have difficulty with attention, memory, and impulse control, Drow don't really care for these, where these tendencies come from, and the centuries long of influence have changed them from the brutes described in pre-Grat histories. They've basically social engineered the Orc Chattel to make them useful servants. Capable youngsters have a duty to care for any orcs to help them survive. Aged and feeble orcs are permitted to endure only to teach the young skill and indoctrinate them appropriate regardless their betters. And Drow overseers watch the enclaves, with the aid of half-orcs and a few elder orcs loyal to them. Within the orc enclaves on Apostate, there's programs to reward and punish, accompanied by educations and tempers them for jobs that they can perform. If you are anticipated to be a technician, it might be considered to respond well or to take pleasure to technical work. The bodyguard could be habitually to extreme ferocity to defend its ward, various things like that kind of thing. So there's a lot of social engineering for them. And the old teach the young these various things. So the social conditioning makes it difficult for them to adapt to other cultures. They're gruff and terse, entering others only when necessary. One without hierarchy, embrace or rejects the tradition might exist. So, again, there are some that are free outside of it, but there are species that's largely lost because of what happened with the disappearance of Galarian. And unfortunately, just most of them are in pretty terrible condition. Bonus to strength, penalty to charisma. Big bonus to strength. They're condition focused, dark vision, fierce survival, low light vision, ferocity. They're a bit of a sad tale. The I want a better one for that one. Boop boop. That's a better one. Oread. This is from book. Let me just get the correct book here. Book Dawn of Flame. The book, the 17th book of the series, Dawn of Flame, Solar Strike, if you want to look where the Oread was introduced. Humanoids and bloodlines are fused with the power of the plane of Earth, such as a Shtan. They have skin in dark neutral tones, have features that appear to be made of stone, crystal, packed earth. They're generally calm to a bit of stoicism. Bonus to strength, wisdom, penalty, charisma. They're from original Pathfinder. So, I mean, like, there you go with it if you want to look into more of them. They're beings that have earth, plane of earth element, or elemental earth power in their bloodline. Acid resist, dark vision, earth affinity, spell-like abilities. There's some alternate racial traits which are mentioned in the book there. So if you want to check out, the alternate racial traits come from book 46, The Perfect Storm, though, which is, oh boy. I can look up that. Oh, sorry. That's on the list I had here, which is the Drift Crasher's Adventure Path. Sorry. Anyway, but that's all we have on the Oread. They've been introduced in 2 adventure paths. There's a bit of information on them, which is good. But again, they're a legacy more species, so if you want to think of it that way. Let's continue on our adventures with a group from the Alien Archive 2, the Osharu. So, the Osharu are slug-like. To the slug-like Osharu, religion and science are 2 sides of the same coin. Concepts with intrinsic dependencies as life or death. Their monk scientists dedicate their lives to studying various fields of science, sharing their discovery with fellow Osharus and other races, and express for a passion for affinity. I'm butchering that word. Just gonna say that there. They dedicate their discoveries to their deity, Yarseya, the patron of learning and science. Their settlements are essentially city-side universities. Individuals involved in smaller fields of study group together so they can aid each other's research, and entire districts spring up naturally around congregations of higher learning, equipped with canteens, libraries, living quarters, workstations relevant to a field. Their ultimate quest for knowledge has no planetary bounds. They often embark on fieldwork expeditions to other star systems to study foreign planets, stars, emptiness of space itself. They go on diplomatic missions to exchange knowledge with other intelligent, enlightened-minded races. Though stalwart in mind and faith, they're physically delicate. They're harmed not only by salt and salt water, but also cumbersome dependent on moisture and humid environments. Exposure to extreme heat, direct sunlight for extended amount of times without protective magic or armor makes them uncomfortable. Those who aren't magically inclined might even resort to soaking their clothes, carrying large canteens of water for rehydration when exploring in mildly arid biomes. Despite their willingness to face great danger, most are timid. They are basically a timid and paranoid race. Most common fear is that their desire to explore the galaxy and exchange knowledge with other species could ultimately result in their exploitation or even eradication. So it's sort of like they want to share, but they worry about that deep within their minds. To cope with this, they refuse to travel beyond the safety. They do oftentimes refuse to travel outside of their university cities alone, usually accompanied by one other Osharu so they can protect and comfort each other. They sometimes develop such a bond with equally sensitive members of other species, establishing basically a mutual support system. So they can, if they find another species that's kind of paranoid, kind of like worried about things, they kind of work together to reassure each other. They're usually about 4 feet tall, weighing about 140 pounds, in wide variety colors and patterns. Even two parents with similar color patterns or colors have completely different looking offspring, which is usually... it's not unusual for a beige, leopard-spotted Osharu to give birth to a bright pink or green tiger-stripe progeny. Diversity is celebrated amongst them. And they find the predictability of hereditary outcomes of other humanoid species been unusual and fascinating. And there are most of university cities have districts dedicated to xenogenetics as a result of this. Bonus to intelligence and wisdom penalty. Constitution. They have a land and swim speed. They're scientists, polymath, they have some slime, and they're susceptible to salt. From the Near Space book, they have both alternate ability adjustments and alternate racial traits, if you want to check those out. And these are different than the entities in the Alien Archive 2. So, a book basically gave us some more information on them, and some more in-depth stuff for some versions of them. There's differences, which is always fun. Let's move on to the Pahtra. And this interstellar species also has the Pahtra in them. So we're going to go into a little bit more in depth, as usually we do with the interstellar species ones. They're from their home planet of Polonis, a world racked by magnetic stores inhabited by titanic flora and wildlife. To rise to the challenges, they took a path different from many galactic species. Unconventional technology and ironclad traditions focused on combat. Their conquest by the Vesk and subsequent exposure to Pack Worlds had a social revolution within them. Younger Pahtras rejecting the past forced upon them by their elders. The legacy of the past still holds strong, however, as Pahtras most people encounter are soldiers that have had physical conditioning, basically required to venture into the universe where everything weighs twice as much. So, Dex Charisma bonus is strength penalty. They've got their senses, nimbles, talent, wary. Those raised on Polonis tend to be tall, lanky, wiry muscles that reads too thin for many species. A typical Polonis Pahtra stands about 6 to 7 feet tall, weighs 150 pounds. Bodies and limbs are elongated. Many of their bones aren't entirely fused, causing their joints to be loose than most creatures that reside in higher gravity worlds. This aspect of their anatomy gives them extended range of motions, increasing flexibility, but sharp limits on how much force they can exert. Pahtra who strains the limits of their strength finds their body distorting more readily than their environment does. As they've expanded the universe, however, they've discovered their physiology is remarkably adaptable. Pahtra, raised on a world with heavier gravity, grows to a similar height, but develops stocky muscular of a large predatory cat. Like many felines, they have meat-ripping teeth, prominent canines, retractable claws on hands and feet, which are useful for eating and climbing. It makes unimpressive weapons, though. Some young Patras will train to deliver lethal blows, often losing the natural flexibility of their tough bodies. They're covered in a layer of short fur that ranges from tawny brown to gray. Each one has a unique dark pattern of irregular blotches, stripes, and spots. Eyes are the most favorite color in the spectrum. Hazel's most common. They are nocturnal predators. Their eyes are highly sensitive to light, allowing them to see in dim and dark conditions. And their pupils can contract into slits to avoid this feature blinding them in bright light. Their most extraordinary sense isn't consistent across the species. Each has a cluster of subdermal sensory organs arrayed across their face. The function varies amongst individuals. Several common types. Harmonic sensitivity is the most common function, allowing them to feel sounds and frequencies. In others, the organs anchor long whiskers that can register the presence of nearby creatures. Those are useful in survival tools in the wilderness. Their hypersensitive makes them uncomfortable in high winds and crowded urban environments. A third group's facial organs have developed olfactory functions similar functions basically increasing their ability to smell. They can also indicate infection, illness with this. There are those also sensitive to magic, sensing local auras of magical energies. So basically, you've got some kind of extra sense that's kind of interesting. I'm not going to dive deep into Polonis, the homeworld of the Pahtra, as I don't do for most of the times. It's better known to the Vesconians Vesk 6. So they know their homeworld name, but it has weak gravitational pull. Just a note on it. They compete very highly life or death struggle. They're well-versed and cooperative to help their extreme surroundings. And youth and seasoned veteran alike striving to excel in the chosen field and distinguish themselves among their peers. Their nation-states recreate this rivalry on a grand scale, displaying their latest breakthroughs or triumphs and relentless drive for prestige. They consider friendly opposition bringing out the best in each other in their society. Though, again, this can lead to burnouts, deaths, as they're striving for recognition. That can happen. And not everyone starts on equal footing either, too. Just because of the situations in their society. And, it is a lot of Patra's belief that their warrior training allowed them to challenge the technologically superior invasion of the Vesk. A challenge that earned them their respect, even in defeat. So that's why a lot of those on Polonis don't want to see their traditions taken from them. They see that the fact that they were great warriors, that, yes, they lost the Vesk, but honestly, with a vastly technological superior race, they put up a good fight. And, earned the respect of their conqueror, which is a pretty important thing, I guess, when you want to be conquered by an alien race. Earning their respect means you're... Anyway. They do have some kind of war games. They have a deep love of music. And, youth tends to be sheltered. Anyway. The majority of them are asexual, and they form loving, long life relationships with a partner or small group, and tend to balk at anything that infringes on their individuality. A relatively small population of child-bearing couples sustain their population with litters of 6 to 8 kits at a time. Communal child-rearing is necessary in most of their societies. Both biological parents and adults closely involved in child's rearing are treated as parents. And although sexual attraction and reproduction are key to sustaining populations, their reproductive involvement earns both polite respect and to feel valued without feeling like an obligation to obtain social status. So, yes. Interesting part of their society there, too. Let's move on, though, because, again, we can keep diving into more of them. They are in a book that provides a lot of good information on them, the Interstellar Species Guide. So if you want to dive deeper into them, you can. I recommend it. As I do with most of these that have more information that you can dump into if you're really interested. The Phentomite. This is from Alien Archive 2. Not expanded on as of yet. They're native to Oread, an unusual cluster of land masses floating in regular orbit around a gravitational anomaly in near space. Thousands of years ago, the planet Oread was a technological utopia. A massive industrial accident caused much of the world's mass to explode into space. Mystical gravitational forces created in this disaster allowed the land that survived to remain inhabitable with a very thin atmosphere. Oread is considered 10 country-sized land masses along with several dozen smaller formations that slowly rotate in a central point, sometimes coming within mere feet of another but never colliding. Its surviving population continued on the subsequent centuries. Much of the society lost much of its scientific and magical advancement of forebears. The Phentomites of today live in nations engaged in relatively low-tech artisanship, farming, and trading. They've adapted low oxygen environment, much as much creatures who live their lives in high altitudes do. Their eyes adjust to see in the dark and have developed specialized nerves that grant them thermographic vision. The later might be a mutation caused by the arcane fallout of their planet's accident. They're 7 feet tall, typically about 175 pounds. Mostly blue, their skin is serrated with other colors, usually across the chest and arms. These streaks vary in coloration between them in different areas of the planet. Some have green and yellow bands, others have red and purple lines. Their backwards bending legs gives them a natural ability to jump farther than most humanoids, and their ungual feet granted them purchase in rocky slopes. They decorate their large forehead ridges with dangling charms and religious personal significance. Farmlands of Oread provide them with the majority of the world's important resources, food and natural fibers. The largest land masses contain a few mines. Their cities range from idyllic Neuralic and artisans' enclaves on the shore of Lake Eclipse to industrious Quorlu. I'm butchering these names, thank you very much. Full of bustling factories. Roads of unknown material crisscross their landscapes. Remnants of their past that withstood the test of time and are now used by travelers on foot or wagons pulled by 6-legged draft animals. Traveling between the floating islands makes possible an elite class of them called Bridgers, who use death-defying acrobatics to cross the gaps between land masses, erecting temporary rope and wood structures. Even with the assistance of Bridgers, these trips could take several months to complete. The largest slowing-moving islands come close to each other only for a short time each year. Such a journey is hazardous, and a single slip can send a traveler plummeting towards the gravitational anomaly, a certain death. Pack Worlds ruling recently made contact with them. Abadar Corp has constructed a small space station named Harmony 1 in orbit of Oread. Due to the gravitational anomaly at the heart of the cluster, landing starships on any of the surface is incredibly hazardous. Oread's trade partners have agreed to land otherworld vestivers in a Phentomite designated area outside of Zishfashni, one of their largest cities. Travel to other land masses, then must proceed along terrestrial routes with the aid of local bridgers. Bonus dex, bonus to wisdom, penalty to con. They're acclimated to basically high altitudes, low suffocation, dark vision, heat tracker, natural agility. So an interesting species there with a interesting past. The Prismeni from book 49. A Light in the Dark, which is part of the Drift Hackers Adventure Path. First book of it. Their player signs touched by the drift a spectra native to the plane or triune. They look like mortal parent species. They have odd features that set them apart from their peers, such as metallic gray eyes, yellow-colored locks, thick cords or wire for hair, flesh that shimmers with different colors and various lights. Most were born in the drift. Others found themselves transformed into a Prismeni after close contact with a spectra or being present at a spectra gathering. Very rarely are they naturally born to a prominent or particularly devout triunes, triunites, or else spontaneously transformed into Prismeni after performing a dangerous task on top of triune. As a note, they do have a drift hop. It's limited to line of sight. They don't say it. It's just a note there for keeping in mind that they have a drift hop ability, electric resistant, tech familiarity, dark vision. Bonus to intelligence. So relatively newer one to talk about there. We have four more interstellar species ones, so 4 more in-depth ones to talk about. We'll do our best here. Psacynoids. From the Interstellar Species book, homeworld of Nozala in the Udaste system in near space, Psacynoids have established a unique economy through their subterranean farms of magic crystals. They've made peaceful contact with outsiders of their home system. They have yet to make a large mark in the galactic scene. They do have a growing interstellar market for their magic crystals, which brings their planet wealth and fame. Bonus Dex and Wisdom, penalty to Strength. Crystal Crafters, Hermetic Knowledge, multi-armed. They have 4. And their senses and sonic resistance. It has 4 legs sprouting from a bulbous, round trunk at the base of their body. A slender torso rises to a similarly shaped bulb that forms their head. Some mistake the torso for an elongated neck if it weren't not for the 4 arms thinly extending from it. Their head features a wide mouth and an upward pointed olfactory organ that looks like a crest of hair. The bottom bulbs hold most of their internal organs, including their stomach and heart, and their brain resides in the upper bulb encased in a thick skull. Usually, due to the unusual distribution of their weight, their body is different proportions between their torso and legs. They tend to lead with their head, causing them to careen gait that many other sapien species appear more like stumbling than walking. They're 6 feet tall, 125 pounds. Their homeworld is Nolasa, the 3rd planet near space of the system. Again, as with most times, I generally just hit up a little bit of their homeworld. And I won't dive into their crystal cultivation, because that's a entire thing about their stuff. We'll talk about their society a little bit here. They're the largest being to evolve on the surface. They easily became the dominant species, sapient species. They developed spellcasting power due to the saturation of magic across their planet, and while some used their skills for violence or evil, many were driven to goodness and peace. After a band defeated a necromancer's plans would have spelled destruction for the entire species, community and religious leaders used their influence to create sweeping social change. It became a place for them to donate regularly to charities, engage in community service. Generations later, a spiritual communalism has been practiced, ingrained in their psyche, basically, though. So basically, world-threatening thing happened, made everybody be, like, relatively good aligned, you know? Before the gap, when hard currency was used more frequently and sales of goods were more limited to neighboring communities, merchants would invest in large percentage of profits into their home community. Played for the creation, maintenance, improvement of public transportations, ensuring families with hardships were taken care of, so poverty, hunger, and homelessness were practically non-existent. During this norms, they discovered caverns had remarkable power. Basically, they discovered the crystals. They weathered the gap fairly well, quickly reestablishing relationships and business in the wake of this universal amnesia. Some believe that their planet's inherent magic acted as a kind of dampening field to whatever caused the gaps. These scholars post that while Psacynoids were affected by the gap, as all other species, they were allowed to retain the faintest shadows of their memories. Some sages say this drained a portion of their magic, but since the planet's caves are still producing crystals, they tend to dismiss this claims. Upon constructing drift engines and contacting with other civilizations, the demand for their crystals has skyrocketed. This has put some pressure on those that take care of them. They've adopted the UPB-based Pact World credit as a standard currency. And thanks to banking, they've made quite a sale from their crystals. Basically, there's been a population boom because this money has helped smaller communities on other parts of the world basically get a boon. They worship deities of magic and community. Abadar, a Lortriu, I'm butchering that one there. A growing sect of their religious community calling themselves Stratumians. Basically believe the planet's surface was manufactured and placed into a system of caves by ancient power. And they believe that their ancient ancestors were engineers that did this, but lost the magic to repeat the monumental feat. They went deeper forays in the caves to learn more about the progenitors of their magic in the world. And whether this belief is more science-based or anything, well, hard to say for that. It's their beliefs. Alright, that's the interesting Psacynoids. Let's talk about the... I could butcher these guys. Well, let's get a bigger picture of this one. Bigger one. There we go, slightly bigger. They have really tall, small picture of these dudes here. Another interstellar species friend here, the Quorlu. They're quadrupedal species with 3 arms. Interstellar species is the book that they're in. Their limbs are long and flexible, and as are their 3 eye stalks. Their silicon-based flesh is pliable, rough, and extremely warm. A rocky shell protects their body, but not as much as species' internal heat and elemental nature. They're newcomers to the galactic stage. Their culture leads them to be gregarious and curious, as well as peace-loving, accepting of the change. Since using drift to travel to leave the world, they're explorers, prospectors, engineers, performers, and a lot of sentient creatures find their singing quite enjoyable. Bonus to con and charisma, penalty to dexterity. They're endothermic, lithic, multi-armed with 3 arms, ponderous, so kind of slow, stable, got senses susceptible to cold, tunneler, and unflankable. They evolved on a planet with restless geology and thin, toxic atmosphere. They're basically compact, rough, ovoid bodies, only slightly taller than 4.5 feet tall. Taller at 4.5 feet than they are wide. This body basically hides their mass as they approach 400 pounds. Their bulk of their bodies is the roundish central match, which has 10 appendages radiate. They use 4 of these tentacle limbs for mobility, 3 for manipulation, and the other 3 at the top of their body end in gem-like orbs. The color of any agate, but commonly red-orange to gold, that they use for vision. The limbs other than eye stalks taper on a blunt tip. They can shape and divide this point into articulate digits, much like human fingers. They can have several digits on any limb, but only the 3 central limbs are dexterous enough for fine manipulation, while toes on the lower limbs can help with stabilities. The malleability of these limbs make it easier for them to fit into gear intended for other species. They are unlike any other beings. Their silicon-based physiology makes them akin to living rocks, explaining their mass. Their skin, which leads to hear, smell, taste, and touch, is made up of crystalline elements, and their harder rear shell is similar to the crust of cooled magma. Their shell and skin can vary color and textures depending on the environmental processes and the minerals consumed for sustenance. Most resemble igneous rock. One might show featureless gray and blacks of basalt, other has speckled characteristics of gabbro, and yet another might have crystalline aspects of granite. Internally, their physiology is more uniformed and predictable internal structures. The internal structures require raw material to form the mineral Chorus consumes as food, but require no air. Intense cold slows these hot internal reactions, which burn up toxins and non-magical medicinals alike. Plasma within their bodies supports, nourishes, and protects crystal structures and now is the vital organ is in carbon-based life forms. It also contains molecule chains similar to DNA of carbon-based life forms. They have no clear biological sex. They reproduce by sharing plasmas, which would be parents' extrude nodules that develop in young corals. Corlash is their homeworld. Again, more similar as I always do is you can look up the homeworld on your own. Element 2. They reproduce and rear child communally. Of course, wish to mingle their internal plasma with kindred mates or other beloved corals to create egg-like nodules that contain silicon genetic material, several corals. Each parent is irrelevant in coral culture, but corals still note heritage for historic and medical reasons. So it's not important that who was born you, it's for historic and medical reasons. Culturally, it's not. Kindred has communal nurseries where caretakers watch over nodules until they hatch. Each kindred member takes an infant for rearing, coral children. They focus on ancestral spirits, which resemble deities elsewhere in the galaxy, and reincarnation. For those that lack a fixed orifice and don't breathe, they have remarkable voices. They eat and excrete through openings they create as needed in their skin. Using similar methods, they can create sounds which multiple sound-releasing vents and vibrations in internal skin. They speak and sing this way, creating pleasant tonal vibrations. Those who invest time in training can use their voices to become incredible singers, negotiators, or both. So, very interesting that way. Yes. They've adapted their Haas environment that embraces impermanence. So, they focus little on material wealth or ancestral lands that their cultures value. They place emotional connections, creativity, pleasure, and resilience. They have a practical view towards misfortune and disaster. Destruction calls for rescue, reassess, and if possible, restoration, if it's sensible. Building on installations are pragmatic, built to endure upheaval and plain in design. While portable and magical decorations is fancier and changed often. They explore possibilities and make work and play uplifting experience. They value relationships and experimental but temporary forms of expression. Their monuments and great works of art tend to be stories and song passed through generations. Sharing these are important to their community. Communal groups are called kindreds. So I mentioned the kindreds earlier, but I did it out of order there. Sorry. They're based on mutual values and to a lesser extent skills. A Quorlu was born to a kindred, but it fosters numerous others. Their harshness of the planet has basically, their scientific and magical practice have been refined in the same crucible. The pragmatic streak in their culture derives in survival needs and their desire for joy and life and artistic expressions. So it's very important that, like, their basically entry to the galactic society hasn't basically changed their culture, but basically opened up to wide of possibilities for practical enjoyment. So, an example of innovation due to leaving is the heat amp gauntlets, which most commonly are nearly used against Quorlu talents, but work fine in combat against other species. And so they have some magic's very important to them too. But you can dive deeper into them if you want for the Quorlu. We'll keep moving on because we want to get all of these done before the end of today. Oh, let's back this one. This is from book 21, which is from the Attack of the Swarm adventure path, Huskworld. So, Ramiyels, which are half Ophidian, basically snake, half million humanoids. There are Ramia's sole sapient species, the Ramiyel. They are all female. They have an upper body of a human female, with brightly or darkly hued eyes or hair colors, and a muscular covered serpent body below the waist. Scales are also mark a upper body and face. They're deeply connected emotionally. They can also physically bond, causing the willing participant to conceive if they so wish. The mother then gives birth about 7 months later. Their culture is communal. Individual Ramiyels specialize in tasks for the benefit of the community, pulling resources and efforts to accomplish greater feats. They're deeply in tune with their surroundings, and their adaptation to their communal culture causes them to struggle to develop more diverse sets of skills. They are more comfortable focusing on personal interest. Whether settled or nomadic, their communities remain small by their cultural standards. They rely on the abundant resources of their planet for their needs and sunlight for power. Multiple groups can work in concert, as with the Yalian or the reseeding of Ramya. Defining trait of their culture is their reverence for life and nature. They seek to live in harmony with the life around them. They abhor pollution, waste, and wanton disregard for other living beings. This preference does not evaluate to pacifism. Predation is integral to Ramiyel's understanding of the natural cycle. Huntresses are a vital element of their culture, which is rooted in the hunter-gathering past. This respect for life extends beyond Ramir. Even most hardened Ramiyel operative might spend a few moments after a pitched fight to honor fallen foes and respect loss of life. Despite their spiritual proclivities, which their mystical traditions arrive, they worship no deities. They have deep cultural taboos against trusting, much less revering such entities. If another reason for this tradition existed, it was lost to the gap. Individuals are most often good aligned and focus on balance between the personal and communal. Even Ramiyels who grow up outside the culture remain in that sense of communalism and understanding and respect of life. Xenoanthropologists debate what causes these traits, which would normally abundant to nurture rather than nature. Ramiyels can find it difficult to break away from their communities. Their curiosity can drive them to strike out among the stars. An adventurer one adopts their companions, whether crew of a starship or cadre of explorers, as their community, and she does her best to fulfill her duties in the group, although greedy and aggressive individuals associated might clash with their communal tendencies. They're about 5 feet tall from top of head to where the tail meets the ground, and their tail extends another 5 to 15 feet. They weigh about 220 pounds. They can raise their body up a foot or so, shorten their tail, but it's uncomfortable to do for a period of time, kind of like standing on your tippy toes. While at rest or pausing for a moment, they typically coil under their tail under them and live about as long as humans. Bonus to wisdom, climber, conservative vast, dark vision, life instinct, and personal focus. Interesting one. I'm going to learn more about these one day. It might be good to visit them at some point in the future. Interesting. I always like learning about these interesting species that's like, oh man, it'd be cool if they visit them and give us some more information on them. Let's talk about the Raxilite from the Interstellar Species book. Biotechnology defines them as the composition of their bodies, from the composition of their bodies to the starships and flying cities they call home. Their tiny bodies lack in physical strength they make up for in ingenuity and cultural ethos to cooperate. For some Raxilites, intellectual curiosity drives them to explore and learn all they can, both to achieve personal excellence and to help their homeworld of Raxil have new heights of prosperity. For others, change comes too fast, and each one has to find their own balance of keeping tradition or broadening horizons. Bonuses to Dex, Int, and Charisma. Huge penalty to strength, lowly vision, flowering, or seeding. The Lifting Floor Activation Network, or FAN, with Landfan symbiosis and limited plant benefits. So, their bodies are primarily composed of plant matter. Their round heads are large in proportion than the rest of their bodies, topped with either a flower or cluster of fluffy seeds, depending on their current stage in their life cycle. Small hands are capable of delicate manipulation, and their legs are tapered stumps. Layers of flexible woolly fibers color their bodies. This woody covering hardens over time, restricting its movement so they don't, if they don't periodically shed it, usually about once a year. The time just after their shed is ideal for adding augmentations, which they're particularly fond. Some biochemical augmentations have become so prevalent that they consider to be as much part of the species as organic bodies. Chief among them are the Internal Mobility Augment System, IMUS, which is installed in either body shortly after they sprout. The IMUS serves as a system of artificial muscles that connect directly into their brain. While purely biological ancestors might have been to slowly move around without technological assistance, modern Raxilites evolved together with their technology to rely on a seamless integration with this IMAS. Almost as central to life among adventuring Raxilite is the LFAN, the Lift Floor Activation Network, which produced by their bioengineers in response to first contact with species in other worlds. It's a collection of tendrils that allow them to manipulate objects designed for much larger creatures. Implanting LFANs is now standard practice for their sprouts, and a vast majority of Raxilites are born before first contact have the LFAN installed. They possess limited photosynthetic abilities. Basking drives some starch production, but most sunlight helps their bodies manufacture a variety of vitamins, proteins, and non-carbohydrate nutrients for good health. For most of them, their energy, they do need to eat, though. Their diet is predominantly vegetarian, with a smattering of diverse spoils ingested to secure key ingredients. They can digest meat, dairy, eggs, and related products. There's foods that are considered curiosities rather than staples. So, like, normally it's vegetation and soil that they ingest. They can ingest other things that other species would, possibly to get nutrients, but they're not as nutritional as their normal meals. In times of nutritional stress, they can drive their legs into soil and take root, growing a shallow system of rhizomes and enter a state of photosynthetic torpor, in barely cognizant of their surrounding. This strategy sometimes deactivates or even destroys part of the IMAS, and there are enough cautionary tales of this transform being difficult to reverse that most avoid it except as an act of desperation. I'm not going to dive into Raxil, as it is a mostly water-covered planet with land divided with clusters of warm volcanic islands. You know, again, diving into their planets, not something I normally do a lot. Children of them. All Raxilites are born on Raxil. The other planets lack the resources and infrastructure to install the IMAS and LFAN systems, which most Raximites consider negligent to deprive children with. So it's sort of like, not all Raximites are born there, but Raximites are born there. But it's sort of considered kind of terrible to do to children if they aren't done on the planet. And their initial connections are being raised in the community. They produce 20 seeds at a time, and once planted in suitable soil, take about 2 weeks to germinate and uproot. Newborn sprouts are raised in the community, and parents are expected to remain nearby and help provide food and guidance. Sprouts spend their brief childhood learning, growing, and beginning to discover their strengths and interests. Just over a season on Raxil, roughly about one packed year, they sprout their first flower and are recognized as full members of the community, able to vote, enter into contracts, travel the stars, participate in civil life. It takes them about a year to grow into adult. Community support is very strong for them, basically. And most Raxilites might choose to have children at least once in their lifetime. They have both male and female reproductive systems. Flowering Raxilites who want to have children convene with one or more partners to exchange pollen. As their seeds mature, they enter a seeding stage where puffy seeds sprout on their heads. They can maintain this seed indefinitely, and mates often choose to germinate their seeds in the same community around the same time. It's entirely acceptable to part ways and raise their respective offspring at different places and times. They are capable of self-pollinating, but rarely choose to do so. If a Raxilite relies on such cloning to produce offspring, they face stigma from other members of the community because they are community-minded species, and basically are pointed out, why didn't you find a partner, kind of thing. So yes. Whew. Change is important to their system because of their evolution of their system. Hey, they're on volcanic planets and stuff like that with Raxil. They enjoy good debate. And again, they emphasize community and cooperation. So. They are, basically, they don't have an importance on the concept of gender. Identify as a single one if you would ask. Describe themselves as agender, gender fluid, beginning in multiple genders of ask. Basically, it's sort of like if you compare it to something that other species would have and try to talk to them about them. Choices of things like pronouns are guided by factors such as sound and perception. They might choose one in common, one in Akatoan, depending on what sounds most pleasing to them. Or represents their social role, basically. So it's, they're, don't have concepts the same way as many other mammalian species or like similar species would. Not mammalian. Mammalian's not the word. Other multi-gendered species. And biotech is very important to them. That's just another thing about it, so it's very important. So anyway, I think it's enough diving into Raxilites. I can recommend the Interstellar Species book if you want to dive deeper into them and you're more interested in them. These little sprouty dudes, kind of interesting. Dudes and dudettes. Theys. And whatever. Reptoids. Alien Archive. The original one gave us the Reptoids. So, they are masters of disguise and deception who have shape-changing ability that they use to infiltrate countless other societies. Impersonating influential individuals, seeking positions of powers in their target culture. A number of Reptoids hidden with any given society is unknown, as in addition to their excellent espionage and infiltration skills, they also have psychic magic allows them to cover their tracks and ensure cooperation of their enemies. The limited nature of their shape-changing ability means that individual typically holds on to one alias at a time and undertakes a process of changing its cover only if the identity has been compromised. In some cases, Reptoids work behind the scenes to engineer mysterious accidents which allow them to discard problematic identities and assume new ones. And some conspiracy theorists or counter-espionage officials tend to view highly profiled death as signs of potential Reptoid activity. Either covert assassinations by the creatures or staged death to cover new identities. They're known to spend years in their assumed forms, often spend most of their lives as other creatures than in their natural forms. Reptoid masters are masterminds behind their race's plots and infiltration, appearing rarely even in rumor and even less commonly encountered in the flesh. The masters command much more powerful domination magic than typical ones, ensuring their plots and identities remain hidden. And they are believed to be the leaders of the Inatic race. How they're chosen or made remains a mystery. No one in the Pack Worlds knows whether the Reptoid Masters are the first to infiltrate a society and remain so effectively hidden that they're never uncovered, if they arrive on a planet only after other Reptoids establish a power base, or if they remain distant to their kin and pull the strings from a command center, which could be anywhere in the galaxy, even on Absalom Station itself. Reptoids are secret about their goals and infiltrations, and under extreme duress, they choose to die rather than reveal information of their homeworld or race. Some posit they are weakening target size preparation for eventual invasions. Others argue he's already complete control and have no need for evasion, preferring to live like parasites within a host society. Bonus strength and charisma, pound and dexterity. They can change shape. cold-blooded, and natural weapons. We haven't heard much else from them, even though they're there and technically have stats to play one of them. Technically. And the final one to talk about today. Yes, we got one more to talk about today, and then we're done. We've almost run through it. Another one from the Interstellar Species book, the Ryphorians. They're a trimorphic humanoid with a variant physical characteristics depending on the season of their birth. Magic technology allow present-day Ryphorians to transcend the seasonal cycle, though old stereotypes surrounding summer-born and winter-born individuals endure, as does the mystery surrounding the rare transitional Ryphorians born between summer and winter. Ryphorians evolved on their homeworld Triaxis, but can live anywhere in the galaxy. Their Skyfire legionnaires soar among the stars before the gap, and many Ryphorians still become pilots or warriors alongside their bonded dragonkin partners. Blows to con, wisdom, penalty, strength. They get a bonus feat, keen senses, low version, and they're trimorphic. Due to the generations-long seasons on Triaxis, their biology differs depending on which season they're born. They're separated into three categories: winterborns, summerborns, and transitionals, which often appear as a combination of two primary forms. They have long pointed ears and feathered edges, which give them exceptionally good hearing and particularly long canine teeth that can protrude from their mouth like fangs when they smile. They have long arms and legs that struggle to retain noticeable muscle mass, though despite their lithe appearance, the harsh environment of their home planets means they have developed sturdy forms and overflowing stamina. The current season on Triaxis is winter, as of when this was mentioned in Interstellar Species. I guess when the book came out. And probably because it's generations long, I would assume in the timeline of Starfinder, it's just going to be winter the entire time. So we're just going to say that. So the majority of Ryphorians are winterborn. They have pale skin, narrow eyes that protect from snow blindness, and their skin is covered in light fur to help protect against sub-zero temperatures. Winterborn Ryphorians have no difficulty growing full heads of long hair, even in old age, though winterborn hair color is always a shade of blonde, silver, or white. It's trendy for them to dye their hair with bright fashion colors to show originality. Those that form bonds with dragonkin partners often dye their hair and fur to match their partner's scale color. Modern technological advances and magical discoveries allow Ryphorians of any type to survive the seasons in relative comfort. Although all are born with a form matching the current season, many choose to convert to summerborn. They have hairless bodies, darker skin tones, wide, dark eyes that protect them from harsh environments and constant rays of the sun. Many favor color intricate tattoos, sometimes completely covering their skin. They get matching tattoos on their dragons, the solitary preposterous. Transitional Ryphorians are only born during a short period between seasons, where temperature and weather are unpredictable. Converting to a transitional form is possible, though few choose this path. Unfortunately, the ancient anxiety surrounding the harbingers of seasonal change still plagues the transitional Ryphorians. Outsiders, artists, and freethinkers are more likely to seek this transition. Charlatans and manipulators sometimes take advantage of the third orb's mystique, claiming to be powerful mystics or prophets for their traditional appearance. They display a combination of summerborn and winterborn traits, as brown skin and patches of fur. Traditionally, transitionals also have usual characteristics, markings, and fur colorations. These features are deformities to some, but rare beauties to others. Triaxis is their home planet. Seventh planet of the pack world Sun. Again, it's, look into that as much as you will. The political structure of the allied territories is so varied. Their faiths and political views can be difficult to follow. The social structure is greatly different from place to place. Some cultural norms exist in an overwhelming majority of their settlements. They prefer communal living spaces and cultural acceptance of Ryphorian dragonkin bond. Bonded partners live together alongside another's domestic and romantic partners, children, and sometimes immediate family. Most houses have been built to accommodate these large, complex families, which also include dragonkin. Ryphorians who aren't bonded or lack steady romantic partners often live with several moonmates or alongside extended family in apartments or houses and numerous bedrooms. I talked about Dragonkin before. Keep that in mind. Checking out an older episode. I think it was episode 1 or 2 of the series. When the workday ends, these household, oftentimes domestic alliances, enjoy activities together, gaming, watching, and commenting on vid programs, discussing the day's events. Outside home, many residents employ the spas, hot springs, by the planet's volcanic activities. Most of them are open in the afternoon to catch as much business, and catch as much of their business in the evening, with reservations for Ryphorians and Dragonkin friends sharing a relaxing host-work soak. During the summer, these spots stay open much later, so parties can enjoy outdoor springs in slightly cooler temperatures. Indoor hollow entertainment parlors are also common, usually the easiest, safest ways to escape the harsh climate for even a few hours at a time. Many Ryphorians in the allied territories feel comfortable in groups, experience anxiety when away from or when alone for a long period of time. Communal living vid streams are popular among those traveling the territories. These streams simulate group meals, bathing, and gaming to combat the isolationists of cramped one-person apartments and ship quarters. So, neighborly connections, they could be planetary guides. There's also more to talk about them. But, again, it's the Interstellar Species book. It has a lot of good information. I would recommend checking that out if you want to dive deeper. Ryphorians. And hey, maybe that's an idea for a character with one of your friends. Play a Ryphorian and their bonded Dragonkin. You can do that as a setup for a group. But I think that's where we will end for today. Because again, I was doing up through R, and yeah, I think the last time I talked it was a little longer, but you know, that feels like a good amount of time. We talked for about an hour and a half about all these different species and got deep into them. Next time we'll hit up the letter S, and then we'll have one final kind of episode for now, going through the rest of the alphabet. I always find it very interesting to talk about a lot of these species. It's one of those things that Starfinder always finds a way to have the most interesting set of unique species that you can talk about, where they have explore what alien worlds do. I think that's one of the reasons that I actually find Starfinder so interesting. It's one of those things that goes beyond what we see in a lot of popular, honestly, science fiction, especially spacefaring media, things like Star Wars and Star Treks. Their alien species tend to be very similar a lot of times to humans, if not physically, at least in certain ways. That makes it very easy to have them and display them on screen and stuff. There are differences and exceptions and things like that, but there isn't a lot of the same unusualness that we see. And again, I've talked about this maybe before. Looking at these, they're really interesting. They're varying, they're different, they have life cycles and structures and things that are completely, honestly, alien to the way that we look at things. And it's very interesting. I hope you enjoyed learning about all these here. Maybe you want to play some of them. Maybe you want to dive into some of the deeper ones. Again, like I think the Interstellar Species book, or if you want to go full read on the Archives of Nethys, I tried to either summarize or speak about the different areas and, you know, communicate with you the best ability of the information that's there. I try my best. I'm working off of a kind of, in quotation, script here, and I'm trying to give you enough information to have you interested in them and maybe want to play them. And, you know, maybe, you know, look into them more. Yeah, they have culture based around biology, which is rare. So, and that's the thing is, we have these interesting. I talked about the Quorlu. The Quorlu were really neat. I think that was one of my favorite ones to talk about today. The frickin' like silicon based life forms. You know, that's really interesting. Or the people with 7 genders, you know, that they all have to work together to have one child, you know? That's interesting, you know? These are very interesting ways that this all works together. We'll go over more of them. There's more species to talk about. And I hope this has expressed some interest in Starfinder for everybody. You know, as much as, like, I'm doing some Starfinder material, I'm not doing as much as I do for Pathfinder or World of Darkness. And I want this to be one, because it is an interesting one that Paizo's done and is connected with Pathfinder to learn about it. But anyway, thank you for joining me today. If you're joining me live, like Worm here just pops in here, and others sometimes do, you can enjoy. If you're joining me live, hey, you can always leave a comment about this. Have you played Starfinder or any of these species in Starfinder? If you're joining me on YouTube later on when this goes up in either a day or two, hey YouTube, your comment here. Have you played any of these in Starfinder? But, follow on Twitch, subscription on YouTube, a like, a comment, ring a bell for that there. Those are great ways to support. I also have social media, at least for now, definitely the Discord and Twitter.com, at least for now. Who knows what's going on with that site. But I have those, and I usually give at least the schedule of what's going on and just random brain farts about updates and stuff like that. I think that's all the shout-outs today. If you want to see more tabletop stuff live, it goes up on... I'm streaming on Twitch on every Tuesday, Thursday, usually early afternoon, depending on life schedule and stuff like that. And then Saturdays in late morning, usually around, a little before noon for that time. Those are live. These all do go up on YouTube a couple days later. Other tabletop-related stuff, discussing tabletop, my tabletop discussion shows Saturday evenings, 6 p.m. And I have a live show, currently only one right now, on Wednesday evenings at 9 p.m., where we play Pathfinder. First edition, though, but it is related to Starfinder. And, hey, we'll probably have to talk about Starfinder 2nd edition when it comes out. I definitely think I will be visiting that when it officially comes out. That's it. All right, everybody. Have a great rest of your day, and until the next time we chat about Starfinder or something else in tabletop, I bid you all out there a wonderful farewell.